Welcome to the Kingdom Podcast, featuring Commissioner Christine King, where all voices are heard.
Welcome to another edition of the Kingdom Podcast, where all voices are heard. I am Christine King, Chairwoman of the City of Miami Commission and Commissioner for District 5. Today, my guest is my friend, Mayor Francis Suarez of the City of Miami. Welcome.
It's great to be with you, Madam Chairwoman. It's a lot of fun always spending time with you and talking about the issues that we care about in the city that we both love very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
I don't have a script prepared. I think we're just going to kick it around. Is there anything that you would like specifically to talk about? Do you want to tease me like you do all the time?
Look, I think there's a lot of good news, and I think one of the things that concerns me as a public official and as a representative of the people of the city of Miami is that if you sometimes listen to the press or bloggers or whatever, you're inundated with a lot of like bad news, and the truth is exactly the opposite. The city of Miami is thriving. It's doing phenomenally well. Last year we grew 14%, which I think is a record. It's certainly a record in the 13 years that I've been, almost 14 years that I've been a public official in the city. We are about to finish the year with one of the lowest homicide rates per capita and one of the lowest homicide rates in our history. I think, we're on the trend to be down 40% from last year, which was a very low year, by the way. Last year we had a very low year. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand it's hard when you get low because you can't get less than zero. Right. Our homeless is down as of the last census, 17%. We're down to 532 from 608 the 6 months before, and I think 620 something a year prior. So that metric is good. We lowered taxes yet again to the lowest level in history. So we've never had a lower tax rate. So for our citizens, who are always sensitive to these kinds of things, it's important. And yet we're growing our revenue. So it's a bit of a case where things are going well on both sides, right? We're lowering taxes, but because of our growth and new construction, we actually have more resources to do some of the things that we are very passionate about, like helping the churches of your district and our city meet their 50-year certification. So it's really a beautiful story. I've learned that if you're not telling your story, somebody else will, and you may not like their version of it. So I think these podcasts are very important so that the community knows what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what they should be happy about.
I agree. I do not read anything from the bloggers.
Yeah, ditto for me.
And it's because it's only negative. Like, if they ever said anything positive, then maybe I might tune in. But they never say anything positive. They just focus on the negative. Well,
I'll tell you two things. Yeah, one is at the beginning when I started this, because it's kind of a new phenomenon, this blogger thing, right? It's a relatively new phenomenon. A few years.
I don't know. I mean, it's taken a different...
Like on social media, I mean.
Right, because we've always had,
God
rest his soul, Al Crespo.
Yeah, you've always had critics, professional, what I like to call professional critics. But I'll tell you two things that I think are interesting and that people should know, I believe. One is, at the beginning, when this sort of Twitter and, phenomenon started happening of critics, at first I started engaging, like saying, like, I got to respond to all these people because someone might believe this nonsense, right? These lies, these falsehoods, or uncontext, because sometimes they'll put stuff that's uncontextual, and that's the lie. The lie is not contextualizing the information. And I realized that, I'm the mayor, or a commissioner, because maybe even back to my commissioner time, and I'm spending all this time and energy trying to respond, and these people have nothing else to do. I'm here running the city. Right. And so it's a massive disadvantage. And then the other thing I realized, and I like to hopefully one day be able to prove this definitively, but I'm quite convinced of it, is that these people are getting paid. In other words, these people are, it's very easy for someone who doesn't like you or me, or doesn't like a decision that we made, or is a political enemy of ours, to pay one of these people with a decent sized platform, hey, we're going to give you $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, and you with, a few of your minions or your people that work for you are just going to blast us all day long professionally. And because people have an instinct to sort of believe what they see, it affects a certain percentage of people, and that's all they want to do. They just want to impact 10%, 20%, 30% of people. But I'm very blessed because I always think back to being elected by 85%, being reelected by close to 80%. I worked really hard on behalf of the citizens with you, alongside you, and all our colleagues on the commission, to try to gain their trust and maintain their trust in a way that, this is a city I was born in. I love this city. I love every neighborhood of this city. I'm proud of what we've done. I'm proud of the work that we do.
As you should be.
And nobody's perfect. No government is perfect. No city is perfect. But I can tell you I've traveled the country and the world, as you know, and I can tell you there's a lot of Miami envy in a positive way, in the sense that, I'll travel the country and people constantly ask me, why can't you run for mayor of my city? You know what I mean? Why can't you bring that success to my city? That was a part of what influenced me to run for president of the United States, because I was president of the Conference of Mayors, and, people would constantly, LA, Chicago, all these cities, big cities, where people would say, why can't you be my mayor?
Right.
So,
by the way, I'm very proud of you for that.
Thank you.
I think, and I've said it, and let me say it publicly, I think it's amazing when you have the opportunity to go for your dream, and it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there, to get all those shots that you were taking, right? And all of that misinformation. I don't think you should give up. I think if you'd made it to that debate stage, America would have fallen in love with you, and you would have chewed them up and spit them out, because you know your stuff. You're handsome. You're a great speaker.
Thank you.
They kept you off that stage on purpose.
Listen, I'll tell you this. It was frustrating the way it happened, A, and B, it was frustrating after having seen the debate. And seeing that there weren't any questions that I didn't think I could handle. Right. And seeing that I think I could have stacked up well. And I'll tell you I'm not going to mention the name of the candidate, but I have a candidate who, I'm pretty good friends with all of them. I get along with basically almost all of them, right? And I would say one of them called me and said, I have to admit that I was kind of a little happy that you didn't make the stage. Yeah. And, but I'll tell you that, it wasn't a lifelong dream for me, Madam Chair. It was really a product of what I believed was a really unique success story in America, which is our city. And the idea that when you see other cities across America that are struggling with homelessness, with crime, with lawlessness, with all these issues, and we are, again, we're not perfect, but we're doing really well metrically, objectively. People could say, oh, we're this, we're that. Again, there are things we need to do better.
No, but we're innovative. What we're doing with our homeless population, I travel quite a bit myself. And what we're doing with our homeless population and the new facility that is coming online with Judge Leifman for homeless people that are suffering from mental illness.
Incredible facility.
Incredible.
Game changing.
It is. It's going to help us achieve functional zero.
And when you look at things like housing, which is a constant thing that we hear, first of all, again, I've traveled the country. I could tell you housing costs are up throughout the United States, in urban cities across the U.S., number one. Number two, we have a lot of demand. People want to come here. Yes. I can't, as the mayor, start talking bad about my city to try to dissuade people from coming here. I have a good friend who's a mayor of a city. I'm not going to say his name or the city because I don't want to put him out there. But he said, I have the opposite problem. People don't want to come to my city. So I have lots of affordable housing because I have lots of housing supply versus demand. So we have the opposite problem. I think our job, and you've done a great job with this, and we all have to push each other, is to take the resources that we have and maximize them to the maximum extent possible and get them on the street as quickly as we can.
That's right.
And that's a job we all have to do collectively. I want to be a help on the CRAs, extending them and making sure that we have resources for the long run. I'm not a CRA board member, so I have a very limited role.
Right.
But to the extent that I can lobby county commissioners that I have a relationship with. I want to be a part of that because I feel a sense of obligation and I want to help you. I realized, if anyone were asking me, like, what's my biggest takeaway from being mayor now for close to 6 years, or now I think actually 6 years as of the broadcast, I would say my biggest role, or one of my biggest roles, is just to help the commissioners be successful. To be a facilitator for their success.
But you've done that.
I've tried.
At least you've done that for me.
I've tried for everyone.
You've really held my hand.
Yeah, I've
I'm
tried that
a
for everyone.
first-time elected official, never held office before. I was terrified.
You were.
And then you said, be chair, and I was more terrified. More terrified.
She actually, for the viewers, I want you to know this, she actually rejected me initially.
I did. I was like,
She
no.
said, I can't do it. I'm too young. I'm too young in the sense of like I'm too new. I'm not capable. And I said, Christine, I've known you for a while. I've been watching you for a while. We need your particular unique characteristics in this moment to manage the council and the commission. And I'm telling you, I know everyone here, and I think you're perfect for this job. And you were reluctant, but...
more than reluctant. I was more than reluctant. Let's be honest. I was more than reluctant.
Was it the right decision? Or what?
It was. Okay. It was. And from all accounts, staff, my colleagues, others that are invested in our commission meetings, they love the way I chair the meetings.
Listen, I've chaired the council before as a commissioner. And you're the way I look at it, I use a basketball analogy, you're the point guard. So you distribute the ball, right?
Okay.
And you want to make sure that everyone gets their shots, right? And you have to control the flow of the game, right? And I think you have to have the right personality to do that. You have to be nice and unifying and be civil, which you have, all those qualities. But every so often you got to be tough, which you also have.
Yes.
And I think you have that ability, in a nice way, to say, hey, look, that's it. We're moving on, or, next subject.
Yes.
And they respect that.
Yes.
And that has to be, that's not something that's easy to do, I can tell you. But it requires people to respect you, and you do it naturally. And I think that's one of the things that makes it easy for me to have you there in that role.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think one day I might like to have all of them on the podcast. Because going back to the bloggers.
You should.
Some of the bloggers, they're hysterical. Like, it's funny stuff. I don't see it, but someone will send something to me every once in a while, and I think...
I'm going to tell you a story. I think it's a great idea, and I'm going to tell you why. So I was president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and I decided to bring Kevin McCarthy onto... to do a talk, to do basically a podcast talk. It was basically a fireside chat. They call them fireside chats, right? So, the Conference of Mayors, generally speaking, and this is not an insult or in any way negative to the conference. It just is what it is. Most of the mayors are Democrats, right? So as a Republican leading the conference, I got you. As a Republican leading the conference, it's a challenge sometimes, right? Because you want to be true to yourself. You don't want to upset anyone, but at the same time, you have your own philosophy, your own whatever.
Right.
So I decided, and sometimes it's hard for the conference to attract high-level Republican leaders because of that perception. And so we got Kevin McCarthy, because I have a personal friendship with him, and he came, and the point I'm trying to make is he told his personal story. And I always say you don't know anyone until you know their story.
Right.
Because we all have a unique story, which makes us who we are, where we grew up, where our parents are from, the adversities of life that shaped us into who we are. And he was telling his story, and I think it humanizes people, particularly in a hyper-partisan world. You were talking about the nastiness. There's nastiness here in City Hall, and in the city, there's nastiness nationally, right? It's different kind of nastiness.
But there's no nastiness in City Hall now.
No, I don't mean inside. I mean, I'm talking about, in terms of, the city and people criticizing what we do. But when you get to know people's story, you get to know them as human beings. So you take away, you start stripping away the labels.
Yes.
Right? Oh, he's an R. Oh, he's the Speaker of the House. Oh, he's trying to prosecute this. He's just a person.
Right.
Who grew up, who had his own difficulties, his own adversity.
Yes.
And those things shaped who he is and his governing philosophy, his life philosophy, etc. And so I think, I think bringing the councilmen, the commissioners, on is a great idea because I think it will give them an opportunity to tell their story of who they are. Like I'm the oldest of 4. I have 3 sisters. I like to think I'm sensitive because I have no brothers. So all my brothers are like adopted brothers.
Yes.
And I'm surrounded by powerful women. So I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Some people are intimidated by power. I actually think it's great because I'm used to that.
You're used to it.
I grew up with that. So it shapes who I am. My dad obviously was the mayor. He was the first Cuban mayor in Miami and the first Miami-born mayor.
Yeah, you're actually political royalty here.
Well, you know, sometimes that feels like almost like people use that against me.
But you shouldn't. You should take it as a compliment because your father achieved great things as well.
I think the legacy is something that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly I'm proud to be his son. I'm proud of what he has gone. I'm proud of the man that he is and the father that he was to me. And I hope to be the same kind of father and example for my son. He's a very honorable and ethical man. And I'm proud of the fact that we're the first father and son and that, and so to me, it's a beautiful legacy. To me,
it is.
And I hope, I never want to say that. I think it's fair to say that you always want to do it better. In other words, you want to be an improvement. You always want to get better. Every day, I'm trying to get better, be the best version of myself, etc. And so, you want to learn from all the things that he accomplished and he did and who he is, and try to take it to the next level.
Right.
I think that's
what we should do.
Yeah.
For me, I reflect a lot, and I think, what can I do better? What could I have? For example, I have Constituent Tuesday, right? Because I want it to be.
I know how inviolable that day is because I try to set things up with you. Right. You're like, it's not happening. I got Constituent Tuesday.
That's right.
Like, okay.
That's right. And I want it to be.
The world stops for Constituent Tuesday.
Because there are no other people more important than my constituents,
Amen.
right?
Amen.
And what I heard when I went door to door resoundingly was that, you guys come around when you want to vote, but then we never see you again until it's time. And I said, nope, you're going to see me again. You're going to see me again. And we have Constituent Tuesday. You don't need an appointment. You just come, and I'm here. Speaking to my mom, she said, well, what about the people that work?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you should do it in the evening.
Yeah.
So we started doing it like once a quarter in the evening. And I still go door to door. I go door to door.
It's
like
hard.
During the holidays
it's very,
and stuff.
very tiring.
So I can stay connected. That was my goal, to be connected, to listen. And
I'll tell you this, one of the lessons that I learned in my 70-day presidential campaign is, it's not even a lesson that I learned, it's a lesson that you relearn, is that connection that you're talking about. People feel very disconnected.
Yes.
You know what I mean? By and large. They feel, we can talk about all these incredible statistics that we're achieving, which I think is important because that's true. That's a narrative. That is a true narrative. It's an objective narrative. But the connection is always a challenge, even though we have these forums, which I think are great. And I think that's what's one of the blessings of this forum is that you can give people a window into who you are. Right. You can stay connected. They can see you. They can, they can hear you. They can know more profound things about you than even when you knock on a door. Because sometimes you knock on a door and it's a 5-minute conversation. Like, what are the issues?
What are the issues?
What's going on with you? How can I help you? But there's no, you can't spend sometimes 30, 45 minutes with a person because you got to knock on the next door.
Exactly. Well, that's why I do it now because I'm not under a time constraint. I'm not.
But you'll only see, in 2 hours, if you do it by 30-minute increments, you'll see 4 people.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
It's the same thing with Constituent Tuesday. I try to give everyone at least 15 minutes. And I tell you, it's so popular that they're waiting for me before 9 o'clock.
That's nice.
That they can get in to see me.
We should do something like that.
They are waiting for me.
I have a friend who's a mayor of Coral Gables who does it on Friday, religiously.
We were supposed to. I was supposed to meet with him about something.
You should
And
get him on here too. Get him on your podcast.
We could do that.
And talk about how
something happened and we
Coral
didn't.
Gables in Miami, because we share borders. Mm-hmm. So we share borders with other cities, but one of the cities we share a border with is Coral Gables.
Yes.
And I think he's doing a great job. He's the city looks beautiful. He's focused a lot on parks, and it's doing well under his leadership.
Mm-hmm. Our parks are doing amazing too.
Yeah.
Our whole city. I have the police department.
We're blessed.
The police department, the community policing that they do in the districts. I know for D5, I know all of my neighborhood resource officers. I know all of the commanders in
You have to. When you're a commissioner, I remember when I was a commissioner, I lived and breathed with my commanders. My commanders were, in effect, my police chiefs.
Yes,
right?
yes. And they know exactly what's going on.
Absolutely.
They come to the meetings. They show up.
Yep.
And I like to say the first time that you meet our police is not when you're getting arrested.
Yeah, I love that.
It's not when you're getting arrested. That's not the
beautiful.
First time you meet our police.
Let me tell you something about our police, because this is something that I think is really key, and we'll do it on our Good News Wednesdays. We're going to start doing a Good News Wednesdays, because I want to do like a good news announcement on every Wednesday, because there's so much good news, and I don't feel like it's getting out.
It is.
And I'll tell you, one of the things was, we were, I always look at the homicide statistics. Right now we're down, a massive amount for the year, and hopefully finish the year down a tremendous amount and record amount. But I wanted to look at the other side of the coin, because as mayor, we've seen some incidents, obviously across the country, where there's officer-involved incidents, right? And as mayor, you get those calls, right? Oh, this happened, be ready, the media's gonna ask, And I hadn't gotten one in a long time.
Right.
And I was like, man, this has been a while.
Because we get text message.
We get
they
it all.
call us.
Plus, now with social media,
if it's our district,
you'll see it on a social media channel.
Yes.
So I asked, I said, how many complaints, like actual complaints, have we gotten? Last year was 238 complaints. And then I said, well, what do we compare that number to? 238 complaints. What's the right number to compare that to? And I thought, well, I think the right number is calls for service, 911 calls. In other words, every time police officers asked to respond, versus the number of complaints. That's how you should measure it. And I found out that last year we had approximately 330,000 911 calls. So 330,000 calls
resulted in 200
complaints. By the way, not all the complaints are valid complaints. Just like when people complain about us, they're not always valid, right? So, I don't even know what the validity rate of those complaints is. But
well, I do, because that report came out, and for District 5, we had a large number of complaints, and it didn't make sense to us, so we drilled down.
Right.
Okay, so one incident, you could have 10 people complain about that one incident.
Right.
It's the same complaint, but 10 people. Yeah. But instead of making
Counts
it
10 times.
They counted it 10 times, which isn't fair.
Correct.
That wasn't fair.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's how we got to, what was it, Yvette? Something like 75 complaints or something. But then when we broke it down,
it was a lot less incidents.
Multiple complaints on one incident.
Which makes it more likely that incident, maybe there was something wrong that happened there. Because if you have 10 people complaining about the same thing. But it also contextualizes, we talk about context, right? It contextualizes the information much better. So, yeah. So listen, the city's doing well. I'm excited. I have 2 more years left on my term. I have a good relationship thankfully, with all my colleagues downstairs. And like I said,
Me too.
I view my role as to help each one of them individually succeed and collectively succeed. I do think there's a little bit of an us against the world mentality right now, because I feel like, again, everybody on the outside just wants us to fail. All they want to do is, it's like a biblical quote where they want to pick out the speck in your eye, you know what I mean? Like the little dirt.
You know what? I don't know if that's true for me and my district, or if it's because I don't read negative stuff. Right. I just don't. Yeah. I don't read any of that stuff. I don't particularly read
it, but it comes to me because.
Okay, so it has to be either hysterical. Or really egregious for someone to send it to me.
Well, I get both.
they have to send it to me, because I don't go searching for it. I don't have time to sit there and look at that stuff. And you're right. Like, I have spoken to a couple of reporters, and I said, you know, I don't mind you writing anything, because I don't get any validation if you write something good about me,
Right.
nor do I get any angst about you writing something bad about me. But tell the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what they don't do.
No, and they're into narrative building.
Right.
And that's what I don't like. It's one thing, like you said, if there's an article on something that happened that's factual, you have every right, and frankly, you have an obligation to publish it. But when you start narrative building, you start stacking
Right.
editorials,
Right.
you start stacking all this other stuff.
And I thought, crazy, that the papers are supposed to
Be objective.
report. Yeah, it's supposed to be neutral.
Right.
And everybody's to make their own.
Yeah. Well, that's why people
Opinion.
have lost a lot of faith in the press and the information they get when you look at polls. And then they themselves get upset if you criticize them. If you criticize someone, a member of the press, they get very upset. They rally around each other.
Oh,
They defend
yes,
each other.
I know.
Very upset.
Oh, I know.
And you're just
One
like,
of
"Wait
the
a
last
second, you're
articles.
criticizing me." Yeah.
One of the last articles that was written that mentioned me was completely twisted
Yeah.
to fit their narrative, even though in writing we gave and that's what I do.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily give
Yeah.
Interviews.
I've been doing that too.
We just send the questions and we'll answer the questions. So it's in writing.
We'll send you a statement. Yeah.
But
I've been
even
doing that
that
too.
was twisted.
And it's sad that you have to get there because, again, that comes from a lack of confidence in the person who is supposed to be transmitting the information and a person who's obviously narrative building, unfortunately.
Right. But I stay focused.
Yeah.
My focus is my constituents and improving their lives
Yeah.
through housing,
Yeah.
through working opportunities, economic development, what I'm doing in Little Haiti, what I'm doing here in Overtown, in Liberty City, what we do together.
Amen.
So I don't focus on the negative.
And I also enjoy the work we've already done. I mean,
Right.
when you look at Overtown,
Right.
I mean, we're here in Lyric Theater, and
It's
this
beautiful.
entire area has been transformed completely.
Yes.
And
there's more to come.
and it's you and it's your predecessors who I worked with, who are great people. So it's been a lot of great work, and there's still a lot of great work to do, that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, me too. It's bigger than me.
Yeah,
It's bigger than me. And I tell everybody, failure is not an option.
Yeah.
Because if I fail, the community fails.
yeah,
So I wake up, we keep doing, what can I do better? How can I do this better? How can I reach more people? How could I, like the Hyatt?
yeah. It's a great project.
They gave me 15 units, affordable, infinity for veterans and or seniors,
I love that.
right?
By the way, that's an area where the land just next door traded a couple of buildings down for $125 million for the acre of dirt in the Austin Martin building, which is just on the other side of the causeway. So, I mean, the fact that you accomplished that in a project where the land is that valuable, I mean, that's
and
incredible.
that's what I do. Somebody might say, the naysayers, 15 units, that's nothing. They didn't have to give it to me.
Right.
And I get 15 here, and I get 20 here, and I get some over here. And before you know it, it's made a difference. And you can't tell one of those 15 that wasn't a significant get, because a veteran or a senior will be able to live on the water.
Amen.
So that's what we do.
A lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. I love it. I'm living my dream, and I love it. We are coming to a segment of my podcast that we call the Spitfire Round.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you
Lightning
5
round,
questions.
lightning round.
I'm going to ask you
Uh-oh.
5 questions.
Goodness gracious. I did not see these in advance. Usually, sometimes they show me in advance so I can.
No, that takes the fun out of it.
does.
It takes
I'm
the
sure.
fun out of
Okay.
it. What's the most dangerous thing you do?
What do you mean? Well, aside from being in politics?
But
That's
yeah,
pretty dangerous.
That is.
I like to spearfish.
Spearfish.
Yeah. So and then I often say, I'm not afraid of sharks. I'm not afraid of snakes. I'm not afraid of alligators, but I'm deathly afraid of my wife. So,
I had a guest on who said, in answering this question, the most dangerous thing he does is argue with his wife.
yeah, that's probably true.
Do you have a theme song?
If I answer that question, yes, right? It's kind of like presumptuous,
No.
No? Okay.
No.
I have songs that I absolutely love that I think are symbolic of like what you've talked about, like, for example, and I talked about this actually I was being interviewed by the governor of Iowa in the presidential race, and they asked me the same exact question. And I said, one of the songs I love is U2's Where the Streets Have No Name.
You played that.
I did.
When you got elected mayor.
Correct.
I remember, because that's one of my favorite songs. I love them.
I'm going to try not to get emotional about it, but I think what happens is when we work so hard, people don't realize how hard we work and how much we care. And you try to do so much good and stack up good on top of good that it almost becomes nameless and faceless. Even though every individual case is important, and even though every single person is important, you want to do so much good that you actually forget all the good that you do.
Yeah.
And that people have to remind you.
Yes.
And so that's what the song means to me. Like, I just remember all the houses that I knocked on, all the streets that I went to, all the events that I've gone to. And it's like a big blob of like goodness, and so that's what it means to me, and I love that song.
I love that song too.
Yeah.
I love you too. That was an awesome album.
It
was an awesome.
Incredible. I've actually seen them in concert. Unbelievable.
Really? I haven't.
Unbelievable. Best I think it's the best. Everyone's talking about what's the one that's
Beyonce?
No, Beyonce. They're talking about Beyonce now. They're talking about what? Taylor Swift. That's the one they're talking about.
Yes.
But I'm telling you, U2. Mm-hmm. Sorry, that and Coldplay.
Yeah, I like Coldplay also. What's your favorite book?
Oh my God, I'm reading like 5 books right now. My favorite book, so many. I mean, I have a library in here. I'll tell you the book that I like, that I just read that I like, and it's a book on Vladimir Putin. Mm-hmm. Called The Man Without a Face. And so I'll recommend that to you, and it just shows how ruthless he is. And I think in the context of what's happening in the world, we need to know who we're dealing with.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I think that's important. I read one on Xi Jinping recently. I'm reading one now on the dictator of North Korea. And you see with these dictators who are, horrific, right? What you see is a pattern. It's a pattern of repression. It's a pattern of brutality. It's a pattern of assassinations of political enemies. Mm-hmm. And we saw that with Fidel Castro in Cuba. And people sometimes glorify these people. And I think one of the great things about our constitutional republic is that our power is dispersed.
Yes.
And the people are the ones that hold the power.
Yes.
And I think, it's hard. It's hard because, in a democracy, in a constitutional republic, you've got to convince people every day of the wisdom of your decision. You're not authoritarian. You can't just say, We're going to go do this and we're going to go do that. And that's what makes it challenging. But it's also, Winston Churchill once said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. Meaning it's the best form of government. It's a tough government. But it's worthwhile, that toughness.
It is. If you could have dinner with anyone, living or dead, who would that be?
That's easy. Jesus. How can you not?
Only one other person said that. One person said Albert Einstein and Jesus.
Listen, if you're a Christian, I'm Catholic. If you're a Christian, how are you not going to say Jesus? We believe he's the Son of God. We believe he is God. Like, how are you not going to say God? Hey, come on.
Well, I didn't pick Jesus.
Okay, well, I'd like to. Who did you pick?
I picked my grandma because I didn't get a chance to know her. She died when I was still young, so I didn't. And my mom said she adored me, and I would love to. I would love to have a conversation with her. She was born on the Wakapow Reservation in Guyana. Yes,
amazing.
And I would love to just hear her voice.
By the way, I'm sure she's up in heaven listening to you now. But if she were here, she would love to be with you too, because she would love to see the product.
Yes, no, my mom tells me that all the time.
My grandmother, I was super close to her, and I definitely know in my heart and soul that it would have been amazing to be able to experience some of this stuff with her.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes,
see my kids. I'd love for her to see my kids.
Yes. If you could give your 20-year-old self advice, what would you tell yourself?
It's going to be all right.
It is the resounding response to this question. It's going to be all right.
I think when you're, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't one of these like super achievers at 20, who had maximized his potential.
I certainly wasn't.
No, I would say when I was 20, I'm trying to think now, when I was 20, I was getting close to the point where I realized I needed to get my act together. And I started the process of getting my act together. But I was not like an Ivy League college, top of my class in high school, right? I was top of my class in college in a school that was, great school. I love it, my alma mater, FIU. But it wasn't an Ivy League school. I didn't...
It's becoming one, though.
It's becoming great. In my law school, too. My law school is University of Florida now. It's top 20, which is incredible. It was not top 20 when I was there. So I did the commencement speech for the law school. And the first thing I said was, I want to thank you because you've made my law degree more valuable. It was like 40, 45 when I went there. Now it's like 20. And by the way, they have a great university president, Ben Sass, who's a former U.S. senator, who has some great books that I would recommend. One of them is called Them, and it's about the division in our country and how we heal that division. So a good one. But
I think you would have been a great healer because
that was one of my goals.
I say this as a Democrat.
Yeah.
But it's not about Democrat or Republican when you get down to the business of being the president.
Yeah.
You have to take into consideration everyone because you serve everyone now.
Yeah.
And I think you do a good job of that.
I appreciate it.
I think because we're nonpartisan.
Yeah.
And I believe that you embrace everyone, irrespective of our politics.
Yeah.
It's about service.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe this country needs to understand. It's not about your politics. It's about serving the people of this great country and meeting our needs.
Yeah.
And to understand that we have different needs. And you have to respect and address all of those. And that's what I look for in a leader.
Yeah.
That's who I'm looking for in a presidential candidate.
Yeah.
Not because you belong to this party or that party, but because you are going to be the best person for that job for our country.
Yeah. I definitely heard that a lot from elected officials, mayors, and others who are friends who happen to be Democrats, not Republicans. I think for me, I've always felt this, that what's most important is what kind of person you are, because not everybody's going to agree on every issue. I don't agree with my wife on every issue, right? You're not going to agree with everyone on every issue. But are you a person of integrity?
Right.
Are you a person who cares? Are you a person who can articulate ideas? Are you a person that has creative ideas? Are you a person that can execute? Right? Like, to me, those are the qualities. Are you someone that can bring people together? Are you someone that, like the famous Rudyard Kipling poem, if someone that can walk with kings but never lose a common touch?
Right.
Right? And like be with the everyday regular people and, have that variability. And so, the process, I'm going to tell you, I'll share this one. I know we're probably coming to the end, right? So I'll share this one last story with you. It was probably a month before the presidential election, the presidential campaign ended for me, where I got a phone call from my mother, and she asked me how I was doing. And it dawned on me, it had not dawned on me before that moment, that I was running for the most coveted and complex job in the world.
In the world.
Yes. And that I was one of 8, 10 people that was trying to do that. My side of the ledger is one person on the other side. That I was just one of a handful of people that were trying to do that. And it up until that moment, you get so caught up in the dynamics of like, oh, I got to raise this much money and I got to get this much, petitions and is there a lane and blah, all this microcosm, right? But when she asked me that simple question, like a light bulb went off, like, wow, this is the enormity of this.
Yes.
Kind of dawned on me. And I think to go back to something you said earlier, it's a beautiful, beautiful testament to this country that someone like me, whose parents were not born here, were born in Cuba, came here with relatively nothing, we're allowed to get educated, we're allowed to be professionals and be successful, and we're allowed to hold even political power, in terms of my father, and being the next generation of that. I think the American experiment is a beautiful, beautiful compilation of these kinds of stories. And I think sometimes we take that for granted. And I think we shouldn't, because it's what makes us special.
If we all traveled, we wouldn't take that for granted.
Yeah, I agree.
If
I agree
we
with that.
traveled,
I think that's a great point.
we wouldn't take it for granted.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should give up on that.
No, I'm not saying I am. I mean,
I don't think you should.
Listen, I'll, again, so last story then. your producers are like, you can cut it if you want. When I ran for mayor, people don't realize that the first time that I ran for mayor was not in 2017. Mm-hmm. They forget that I ran in 2013 against the incumbent, against Tomas.
Uh-huh.
And, I really felt at the moment, I was 34 years old, and I really felt that I could do a better job. Mm-hmm. I thought that I was more energetic, dynamic, whatever. And, he still holds it against me. He still criticizes me to this day, which is fine. He has every right to. But it didn't work out for a lot of reasons. And I ended up getting out of the race. He ends up getting reelected, and I stayed a commissioner and tried to get along with him, despite the fact that I ran against him. But it prepared me. The point I'm trying to make is it prepared me.
Right.
It gave me a tremendous learning experience that it made me better at being a commissioner, and it made me better when I ran for mayor the next time,
right,
where I had a huge monetary advantage. I ran with a lot of energy, and I was elected by 85%. So I don't think that 85% happens. That success doesn't happen without the failure.
Exactly.
And I think people always forget that.
Exactly.
They don't forget. They don't remember the failures.
Right. I do.
I do too.
But and they're not failures. They're lessons.
They're lessons.
They're lessons,
Yep.
and it's opportunities to grow. So
okay,
we
gotta
are
wrap it up.
at the end of the podcast. Thank you again for being a
of
guest
fun.
on the Kingdom Podcast, where all voices are heard.
Anytime.
I am Christine King, your hostess for
With the mostest.
With the mostest. Chairwoman of the City of Miami Commission and proud Commissioner of District 5 in the City of Miami. Thank you again for joining me. Till next time.